Hello, this video is to explain this field here in the offsite data entry section of the information page controls. So we've got form adds new records or edits existing. This video assumes that you already understand how offsite data forms work and you've already read the other help information that's available through this link here. So by default, when you make an information page available to be offsite, it will only add in brand new records. So like here's an example of this information page that we've got set up. We can go to this without being a logged in user and fill in this data, and it will create a brand new entry within the system. But let's say you want to have existing client entries have this data be updated to their already existing file. So we can do that via this setting. We can click here and change it to, instead of saying only add new records, we can say only edits, and there's two different options for that, and I'll explain that in a moment, or adds records and edits records. So let's do this first, this second one here, and I'll click save changes on that. And then we can kind of go through what happens now. So when we're at a client record, we see that their client ID is client 64. Now we wouldn't want to ever send them a link or send them, instructions that involved having them type in the number 64, because they can always fiddle around with that number and say, what happens if I change it to 65? And then suddenly they're updating a whole other record. So for that reason, clients have an offsite ID. So if I reload the page now that I've set one information page to allow updating via offsite IDs, we need to know what this person's offsite ID is, and now here it is, it's going to tell us. So every client will have a different random gibberish letters and numbers for their offsite ID. This is not meant to be something that they would ever have to remember, or even something that you would convey to them over the phone, because it's just difficult to say all these things. This is meant to send them like a link in an email or something like that. So I can click on that offsite ID, and it shows me now all the different information pages that we can fill in for this person via that offsite ID. So currently we just have one, the offsite demographics form, and this is this person's direct link to fill in that data. So we can send them that link, and it's going to be unique to them, and the data that they put in will go right into the system for their record. So I can click on this here, and this shows us that, okay, we're at the same offsite information page where we're putting in the data. We've got a header up here letting us know that we're inputting existing data. This header says, for security purposes, the information already saved for this entry will not be shown. That's kind of not exactly true. It's not for security purposes, but it's like this information literally cannot be shown because of the encryption of the system. We can't have that come up here. While I'm talking about this kind of thing, just want to make sure it's clear that, let's say this person already has a gender saved for them in the system. If they come here and put their gender as something else, that will overwrite their existing gender in the system. Okay. If this person has a race already saved within the system and nothing is selected for their race here, the nothingness will not overwrite what they already have. And for points in time entries, when a point in time entry is filled out here, it will always create a brand new entry. So let's say you already have this person set as living in Boston, Massachusetts, and then they come through here and then they put in their full street address and then their location in Boston, Massachusetts, and save the form. It will create a brand new point in time record, and you will likely have to do some cleanup around that. Okay, so we've got this link that we can now send off to this person, and that should be safe enough. Now let's talk about what we can do. We can say, okay, we can edit this link via EmpowerDB or offsite IDs. So we'll save changes on that, and then we'll see what happens when we go back here and reload. So now we can click and we can see, well, here's the links that I can send to the client. It's safe to send to this. And now here's their link with their client ID number inside of here. And you would not want to send this to the clients because, again, they might fiddle with these numbers either on purpose or accidentally and then ruin some data for another person. So the reason why it might be nice to have a link like this is maybe you have some sort of communal computer in your office that people, you kind of sit down people at and say, hey, can you put in this, your intake data in this computer here? And you want to be able to have like staff kind of walk over to it and set the client ID and kind of a more easier to remember kind of thing. So they can staff can walk over to them, like, here, put it in and type in this client ID number. If you have the form set to only edit, then you can bookmark this starting page for it. And it will say, okay, this form is supposed to only be editing, so I need to know what record ID to edit. So you don't even have to remember this full link here. You can just bookmark this page, and then your staff can go over here, go to the bookmark, and say, okay, I want to go to record number 64. And here we are, we can edit record number 64. Okay, one last thing to talk about, and that is this allow repeated edits for the same entry. So by default, we can come here and for record number 64, fill this all in and press submit. And then 3 seconds later, come back and fill this all in again. And it will overwrite the existing data if whatever we've written. It will keep track of it in the revision history. So it'll see like, okay, offsite form, put it this, and then another person doing an offsite form, put that, and you can keep track of that. But it might not be great for you to have that potential that somebody could keep coming into the same form and submitting the same data. Again, this might be just purely out of confusion. You know, they might come to this link again and be like, how come I'm not seeing all the stuff that I previously put in? And they won't know with the encryption, blah, blah, blah. So you might want to say they're not allowed to submit this data if it's been 5 minutes since they've last submitted. So maybe that prevents people from resubmitting the form from like a couple minutes after they've done it out of confusion. You could say, well, maybe 1 day, maybe 20 days. Like, let's say you're expecting clients to fill in a form every month. You would want to pick this and say, okay, after 20, you're not allowed to fill this form again until another 20 days. Or it could be very common that you would choose no. Entry only allowed 1 edit. So once you've clicked submit, that's done. And this client is not allowed to submit data on that offsite form again, which means if they've made a mistake, they have to let you know in some way, and then staff have to go in and manually edit that within the system. And then I guess I realized I didn't explain that you can set an offsite form to add or edit. But if you do that, then just know that you can't do the thing where the starting page is that thing where it says what entry ID should it be, because in this case the starting page is what you would use to add a new entry, and then the other full, if there's the number or that code thing after this is what you would do to edit the existing entry. Okay, so if you have more questions about how this works, we are very happy to answer that. This is a kind of on the more complicated end, and especially like there's going to be 1,000 different ways in which people can use this feature. So we're just very happy to talk you through all the different ways that you might be using it and the best settings for your use case. All right, hope this helps. Bye.